Yeah, hi, good afternoon, folks. We're just going to be starting our webinar shortly. I'll be introducing you the topic and I'll be giving you the whole information on our conversation today. But I'd like to wait a couple of minutes, allow as many as parents to join in. We're expecting a healthy population of kids, parents tuning in to understand about admissions abroad and very predominantly on the topic of SAT and ACT on your entrance exams and a topic that a lot of parents are very much interested nowadays in India with the admissions aspects, the APs. But I will be taking you through the proper introductions of the organization of our topic in a couple of minutes. We're just waiting for all the audience to join across. Right, so just give us a couple of minutes. Meanwhile, I'll suggest everyone to grab a glass of water, grab yourself a pen, register. You may want to take down a couple of notes, but all the information that we do share is also available on various platforms that we have created with the understanding that we want to create an equal level playing when it comes to understanding admissions abroad, various components of admissions abroad themselves. And yeah, you could access them there as well, apart from you taking the notes today. But my one advisory would be just try to take the information today in a form of a conversation. Try to just understand the narrative that I'm trying to give you. At the end of the day, specific things as what are the components within the SAT or the components within ACT, you can get them on Google. The idea today is to give you that kind of information which is not available just through a random Google search, which comes through with years of understanding the topic, with years of working with students, preparing through this journey, and on a very specific note of SAT and ACT, the entrance exams. Right. It's currently 2:03. We'll give it another 2 minutes before I will start, really giving you the whole explanation. So Vinod, we'll start the whole presentation in another 2 to 3 minutes.
Sure.
I suppose my presentation is visible properly?
Yeah.
If anyone is having any problems from the audience, please just use the chat box to let us know if there are any technical difficulties at any point. Once we start our session, we will be taking the questions and answers. I'll be answering them right at the end. But since we are waiting for a couple of more parents to join across, I would also request if there are any pre-questions that parents or students have had currently in their mind, you could use the Q&A section for that aspect. If you want to drop in a couple of questions for me even before we start across, I'll include them in my conversation today. Otherwise, I'll be then answering the Q&As right at the end. Right, so if there's any parent or a kid who has got a question currently for me, you could just put it onto the Q&A section. And do remember, the chat section is there only for technical difficulties. If you can't hear me, if the presentation is not coming out correctly, just do let us know all of those difficulties on the chat. Use the Q&A section for giving me questions across on admissions or anything which you believe wasn't clearly explained. Right. So it is 14:05 now. We are also, I guess, live on other platforms. Apart from that, we are now going to be starting across on our topic of admissions abroad. And this is largely a focused conversation on a very specific part about the admissions, which is your entrance exams towards a top US college in USA. SAT and ACT being the prime two options that a student selects from. And the other part, as I had said, is going to be discussed across on APs, advanced placements. What are they? What are their importance? What's the relevance? Why are they used? And that's the same thing that we will also be doing across with your SAT and ACT. Right now, just moving across, as I said, that's the agenda. I'll also run you through about Let's Unbound. I'll give you an introduction about myself. We will look at briefly the whole US university admissions. We will also shift across to importance of SAT. How does the digital SAT test framework work? What is the new kind of scoring, the adaptive scoring that has now been introduced with SAT? How does it function? And it's really something that has been introduced after SAT has gone totally digital. and then we will have a quick conversation in terms of SAT versus ACT. Don't really see it in a manner that it's a selection between SAT and ACT. That is a very individualized question, but the conversation will be largely running across that how do both of these things find each other different from one another. And apart from that, we will then move across to AP and its importance, and then obviously we'll conclude our conversation with the Let's Unbound process. How do we help you through the journey? How do we help you tackle the challenges that I'll be introducing you today on? So, without further ado, moving across to the organization Let's Unbound. We are, an organization that has been running through the years, helping students on various different aspects about admissions, with a very core skill of ours being focused on the skill creation behind the application themselves. And as you would understand, during this whole admission process, one of the most important parts of it is the SAT and ACT paper, which is a very specific skill, which is based on maths and English predominantly, with a little bit of, let's say, knowledge on sciences, but not something as depth as you see in the joint entrance exam. So this is a very specific skill that we work across on students, apart from various other skills in terms of STEM skills as coding, as mathematics, helping you across with APs, all obviously the preparations, also helping you across with Olympiad preparations, helping you across with various online courses that you could do, moving this to even non-academic activities. We eventually move across and help a student to create the whole profile, not just the SAT and ACT score or the AP score or your academic endeavors, but also helping the student in making the right kind of selections in your non-academic spheres as well. And in that regard, we have worked with more than 5,000 students. We have worked more than 125,000 hours in total tutoring and mentoring sessions. We've got a presence in more than 25 countries. So in that sense, it's a global organization with a very global perspective when it comes to admissions abroad, and the understanding that really is required for you to go through in any of these top colleges in one of the countries. Now, that's about Let's Unbound. I am an admissions consultant. Predominantly, I am a consultant. I have done my own MBA from SCMHRD in Pune. I went across to work with brands as Jaguar Land Rover, Citibank, Standard Chartered. Within the admissions realm, I have worked with Crimson Education and Let's Unbound. Both of these organizations really tackle the different challenges when it comes to admissions abroad, where Crimson is much more using the academic routing, and Let's Unbound, which has got not just let's say a routing as its main principle, but it's more across in terms of your skill build. Over the years, I've also worked with organizations as I think it's Added Sports, which has now become Added Education, and this kind of organization really does the routing moving across from the sports section. So overall, with the years of experience, I have worked with students looking for admissions abroad through the education route, through the sports route, and I think would have more than 100 kids that I've worked with that have gone across to your top global universities, predominantly USA, UK, because that's where the top kids or your top colleges are located. Now, beyond my introduction, just to understand the students that have joined across today, this slide is also to understand that part. It's also there for me to understand you a little bit. So I'm just going to be starting this poll, which is which grade you're in. If you could just quickly give me a couple of answers, it will just help me to understand what kind of audience that I do have today. You could just go ahead and put your vote across through grade 9. And all of the kids that are there in grade below grade 9 itself can just select the grade 9 option. Right, so just give it a couple of more minutes. I do see a good amount of students that have come across from grade 9 and below. We do have grade 11 kids as well. Not a late time. You still do have sufficient, let's say, space in front of you to be going through this SAT preparation. Very honestly, I guess one of the best times for you to even start thinking about SAT, the ones specifically the kids that are in grade 11. October, November is that ideal time when you start preparing for SAT for the first time. And in that way, it's correct. Grade 9, 8 kids, this is the best time in terms of if you're looking at this as a long-term journey. in terms of looking this from the perspective of slowly creating your strengths when it comes to SAT. But do remember, SAT is a grade 10 level examination, so it really gives you the right kind of objectivity once you have done the syllabus itself of the exam that you'll be giving. So yes, you do still prepare in grade 9, grade 10, but that as still is much more in the preparatory phase itself. So apart from this, one of those key aspects that you would see is the year of application that you would be going through. If you're going in university in the year of 25, you would be applying from the start of grade 12, which really places your first SAT attempt somewhere during grade 11. And whichever grade that if you're a 9, calculate when you hit grade 11. That is when your SAT preparations should be concluded. That's when you're supposed to be ready for the SAT exam. And that's the whole objective, trying to give you this understanding that SAT is some paper that you have to give a year before your application. And this application is a document that is almost submitted 9 months before you finish 12. So that is the kind of timelines that one should understand while we be discussing across over the SAT preparations themselves. Now, before we move across and go extremely in depth with what is the SAT preparation like, I think it's also very important for you to have a very quick understanding of your application process in USA itself. And this is one term that we like to use across just to give this explanation, which is a distinctively unbalanced profile. And I know this is a very odd kind of a word where we say unbalanced. Unbalanced is not in terms of putting a very negative terms of saying that it is not on its equal sense, but an unbalanced, what it's typically trying to put across is saying that there's an area of strength where your whole profile is bending towards, that you are very purposefully trying to show a certain kind of an inclination. I mean, if you see the letter T is a very good example of trying to give you that description, right? Where you've got this balanced horizontal line of you trying to show the various kind of activities that you do, with the unbalance in a way being created by this vertical line in which you say that apart from all of those different activities that I do have this one kind of a strength, be it in academics, be it in non-academic activities, right from sports to music, to theater, to dance, to almost anything. And this is a very differentiating part about the US admissions, that it's not to say that you'll be only making an application that would be focused on your, as I would say, the major that you're applying for. It would be going across to various different aspects. It would be going across to various different, activities. So one way to also, put this across is that really good saying, the one that goes across as a jack of all trades is a master of none. But this is a half statement. The full statement completes when you say, but oftentimes better than a master of one. And I guess this line, when I just to repeat it again, a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one, is one of the best ways to describe a distinctively unbalanced profile that what a US admission officer is looking for. It's looking for where you could show strength, where you could show a little bit of dedication. Along with that, you need to show a couple of participation in different areas. So do keep this one aspect. How does this narrative build across? It is built across from a very technical aspect behind these admissions themselves, which is in USA, it is not mandatory to declare the major you'll be studying in your college. So once an application is going across without the major being written, the ability that an admission officer would have to say that there is an activity which is major oriented and thus it is important goes right out the window. So that is now the actual reason why your overall admission officers do not have that idea in their mind that if the student is applying for computer science, so you need to show activities only in computer science, because a lot of times the major may not be written. So the eventuality is the admission officer is looking for a couple of activities in which you can show dedication, interest, and long-term activities behind them. Along with that, you could have a lot of different participatory kind of work that you have also done in various different zones and reps. Now, that's the narrative. How do you, let's say, communicate your profile? How do you communicate your application? It's through the Common App platform. And do remember, I'm using that very specifically, calling it a platform, because the Common App platform will allow you to apply to different 20 universities. Beyond this platform, you could apply directly to colleges themselves, where the components will remain the same and your application just goes directly to that college. Apart from that, what you could also do is you've got these various other platforms, Universities of California, or how they're referred to as UCs. UCs have got their own platform. They're not linked to Common App. MIT has their own process. UTs have their own process. By UTs, I mean Universities of Texas. And as I also had just said, that you could also apply directly to colleges. But having said all of that, the components in all of the different platforms will remain the same, where the first round of check is on your academics. They look at your SAT score, they look at your ACT, your AP's grades are also at times evaluated in your academics, your grade 12 score, your grades from 9th till 11th. All of these aspects are the first thing that you put across onto your Common App, with then followed by 10 different activities that you have been doing since grade 9 to grade 12 of the time of your application, in which you write how many hours a week you do it, how many weeks a year do you do it, a description about it. Did you start this in grade 9? Did you start it in 10th, 11th, or 12th? And mind you, whatever we put onto the Common App are the activities from grade 9 and beyond, because grade 9 in the US admissions is considered your freshman year of high school, the first year of your high school. So the activities that you put on your Common App are all of your high school activities. So this is the second component that we put across onto the Common App. From here, you move on to your documents that you submit as a personal statement. A Common App personal statement is that one common essay that would be going across to every university that you'd be applying under the Common App header. And it is an essay that requires you to describe yourself in extreme depth and detail. And what is your narrative like? What kind of personality do you have? A lot of times, that narrative or that personality that you're trying to describe is backed on the activities that you have done here, in which you're trying to give the experiential difference in your personality due to these activities. Post that, you submit a couple of university-specific essays. So every university may have 1 essay to 2 essays that you may have to submit. And there again, the objective is to give a good understanding of your narrative. And the other functional requirements are also there of taking your narrative and matching it across to the narrative of the college that you are having that essay submitted to. So how does a personal statement and an essay differ? Is that the personal statement is much more generic, much more focused only largely across your narrative, while the essays are then joining the dots from your narrative to the institute that you are going to be applying for. So at this stage, these 3 documents that you have submitted, these documents are the ones that you write, that you will be describing, and it's much more of your attempt of giving a picture to the admissions officer of what kind of a person you are beyond your grades, including your grades themselves. Moving on to the 2 other documents that go across are the 2 letters of recommendations, ideally written by your teacher. And this is the only document that you submit that is not written by you. That is a description about your overall personality. In a way, we also do call this document a verification document or a self-check document. What do we mean by this verification status or the self-check? The idea is that you, apart from submitting your grades, you submit your narrative in these 10 activities. What do I mean to say you submit your narrative? Every activity that you try to show across, right? I mean, if you have started an NGO, you show leadership. If you have worked on a specific project that is social science related, you show that inclination, which is very handy when you're applying for MIT. Or you're doing any project which is very highly impactful to your local community, very handful when you're applying to Stanford. And that leadership, I'm sure very naturally everyone would have connected that to Harvard. So what you're doing through these activities, you're at the first time giving out your narrative in a very subjective way, right? That the admission officer is trying to understand or trying to correlate it with a specific narrative. From there, you move on to your essay, where you yourself are now describing that, yes, I play an instrument or I do this certain activity, but it's not just stating that you do this activity and giving a certificate that you have done it, but it's really down to the personal statement of saying that I've played the guitar, I've played it at a stage performance, this was my experience from it. From the admissions point of view, a certificate is not what authenticates an activity. What authenticates an activity is how have you describe that experiential change while you did that activity, because it's easy to fake a certificate, but it is impossible to fake an experience that you have gained by doing, for example, playing an instrument, playing at a national event in sports, or performing on a national level when it comes across to drama or theater or any of these activities. And it gives the admission officer, firstly, through the personal statement, one level of authentication. It also gives meaning to the activity themselves. It's not just important to do any of these activities. It is very important to really communicate that what was the eventual impact on your personality by running an NGO, by behaving like a leader, or by doing any of those various extracurricular activities. So that first stage is that personal statement in which you're trying to authenticate them. The authentication becomes much more reasonable when you move across to connecting it with your university. And eventually what happens then at this stage is the admission officer puts all of the documents away, picks up your letter of recommendation, covers your name, reads the letter of recommendation. If the first set of documents look connected to this set of documents, it's a good to go. And that's how your overall application is evaluated. Your key dates are from November to January when your applications are moving. 1st of November are your early decisions and early actions. 1st of January are your rest, and then January to April is when you get your result. We just now quickly go across to the weightages that an admission officer puts across, which, taking all of those things that we just discussed in that last slide, it's saying take all of your academics, that is 40% weighted. So on that notion, if I divide all of these all your applications on three aspects, the highest weighted topic on its own are your academics and standardized tests. Your SAT has got a 15% weightage, your IB scores has got a 15% weightage, and then your AP scores, your grades from 9th till 11th, has got another 10% weightage. That creates your whole 40%. Apart from that, 30% are your 10 activities that you put across. The next 30% is your personal statement and your essays and all, or your letters of recommendation. So this is how an admission officer puts weightage to all of this process, where the large chunk does remain in terms of your SAT and APs. But do remember, it's not 95%. It's not like a joint entrance exam where you've got a good rank in your joint entrance exam and you can get into a top IIT. Here, your SAT score is just going to get you started down the road, or get you started down on the right road. So before I just move across, I've got a quick question for all of you guys, that we're going to be looking at the Stanford admission process. My one quick question to you is that round one of of your Stanford admissions is selection or rejection dependent on how good you have done your grades. So round number one, if there are 100 students, they'll check everyone's academic grades, your SAT score, your AP scores, your grade 12 scores, grade scores from 9 till 11. On this basis, they will reject some kids and some kids will go to round two. So if I had asked, as per you, I'm just starting across this poll. So as per you, if the first phase of admissions is a rejection just based on grades, out of 100 kids, how many kids do you think get rejected because of low grades while applying to Stanford? So 95% is saying that 95 kids out of 100 will get rejected due to low grades, or 75%, or 35%, or 15 or 1. So I would just like to know, what do you guys think is the right answer? I'll just give you a couple of more minutes. I've seen the good part about the results is there's a 5%, there's a 35%. You guys are talking on the right lines, and there are a couple of 15% as well, 5% another one. So yeah, let me just give you the answer. The answer for this is that it is actually 4%, even lesser than 5%, that out of every 100 kids, you'll have 3 to 5 rejections that would happen on just your low grades. And what does this tell you? That if you want to apply to a top college like Stanford, getting a 1500 SAT is not the conclusion, it is the initiation. So if you look across by looking at a couple of facts, if you see Princeton University, students that got a SAT score between 1500 to 1600, they only accepted 8.2% of them. And if your percentage just drops below 1400, your chances of selection halves goes down to 3.4%. So in those terms, you could understand just applying to Princeton your publication of a SAT score between 1500 to 1600 is not a confirmation to get admitted. It is to start in this admission process itself. If you look at the ACT score again, if you're scoring in the range of 32 to 36, you have got a 7.8% chance of going through. You still do have a large amount of rejection that happens. If you look at a university like Harvard, 52% of their students would be submitting a SAT score. 50 and approximately 22% even go ahead and do an ACT, but you will see at least half of the kids that would be applying to a Harvard University will be giving an SAT score. And this is, I guess, the right way of starting this conversation now, very focused on your SAT and ACT. I have shown you on the last slide that there are a lot of other things that have to happen beyond your SAT and ACT. The largest reason why students start preparing on this journey from grade 8, grade 9, because even though SAT is down to 15% in this application journey, do remember 50%, more than 50% of these students which go into a top, submit a score into SAT, would apply into a university like Harvard, 52% of them will be giving a SAT score. On these 52%, there will be a selection of only 3 to 4%. So if you are those kids of that 50% that does not have a SAT score, it becomes exponentially difficult for you to crack into that final 3 or 4% of that admission of those kids who eventually went into a Princeton or a Stanford. So I guess if I would have to give you the importance of the activities or the aspects that I'll be talking to you about, I guess this is the best slide to understand. And it is that difficult that I'm not even really trying to say that, if you give SAT, you've got a 90% getting admitted. If you do give SAT, you have reduced your chances by rejection. That's the only thing. And beyond that, you still have to go ahead and do other activities. But do remember, if you do not have a good SAT score, if it's below 1450, there is absolutely no sense or chance that you should be applying to a top 30 college, unless or until there are certain parts about your profile that just stand out and almost changes the whole game. For example, then you're playing national level sports, or you have got an activity in music which is up to a national/international, or you have done Olympiads which is national/international. But yet again, because since this is grade 10 maths and English and you're doing Olympiads in grade 12, imagine you're doing it maths, it doesn't just make sense of you not giving the SAT and ACT score. So I guess another important reason of giving it eventually that you'll understand through my conversation today is it's also the difficulty level. And specifically speaking to a lot of Indian kids, the difficulty level or that difficulty difference between a joint entrance exam and SAT will also give you more understanding of this importance of why should we do it. Another very important reason of why an Indian application should be giving SAT and ACT is that your application will be evaluated with all Indian applications. Do also remember that many will not be writing that their major is a STEM-based subject, yet they would be submitting their math scores, because you realize kids that have studied maths till grade 12 would be more than likely to be acing their SAT scores. So it has been seen over the years of practice that majority of Indian applications do have their SAT and ACT score. So from that perspective, it is very good that you go across and you do submit your SAT and ACT. If you're preparing, if you've joined me in from USA and you're looking at a step-based profile or a step-based degree, again, giving the SAT score from this perspective is extremely important. So the overall agenda behind the slide that I'm showing you is to really drill in the part that how important is it to give this SAT. And just a quick summary over it again, that majority of your students that apply to a Stanford University are the ones with a SAT score of 1500 to 1600. And by Stanford, it is just a name that I'm putting across. If you're applying to any of the top 30 names, the same fact remains. And those are the different data and stats that I wanted to share with you to really set this conversation in. So now let's move across. What is the digital SAT? It is an exam with a duration of 2 hours 14 minutes. It is divided into 2 sections. The platform is online. I'm sure you have understood that by the word digital SAT. It is the most common examination that is submitted for your application to your top US colleges. Now, beyond your top US colleges, it has also expanded its geography to universities in India, Ashoka, Flame, these two universities are using your SAT scores. There was certain news that Amity is also considering this. So there are a lot of international universities that do have SAT. I started with India first of those universities closest to you. Singapore is also using SAT for international applications. A lot of universities in Canada do accept SAT scores. Europe has also got SAT coming right across very actively in your Western European countries. Moving across to UK itself does also accept SAT for a couple of courses in certain universities. So in that term, SAT is a very global kind of a competitive examination that you can use for getting admitted into different parts of the world. And it is run by College Board. So College Board is an NGO that was founded around 1900. It's a non-for-profit organization with a very specific focus of, let's say, helping universities create an equal level or giving students an equal level competition to showcase their brilliance on these various aspects of, let's say, maths and English, and use those scores for applying for top universities. On currently, the SAT scores or the things that are running is that I'd say if you go and look at their website, 22nd November is that registration date for your SAT in December. The last registration of the next cycle, which is the exam happening on 7th of December, will be 26th of November. So if any of the kids that are in grade 11, you guys feel that you're ready for one SAT attempt, do go online between 22nd November to 26th November for registering for SAT. And this attempt will be available on 7th of December itself. It's not very mandatory to go through on the 7th of December attempt itself. Ideally, you could also just use November and December to prepare, and then in January, you'll be giving your SAT score again. So I'll just now explain you one other aspect as well. What is a SAT super score? Because it's very important for students to understand its ramifications and how it typically does operate. And why is it important now? Because I'll just tell you the number of attempts that the student does give. There are approximately 2 to 3 attempts that you'll see majority of the students do. These attempts come in your grade in very December, moving across to very late of April, May should be your final third attempt. There's some kids that do also delay this attempt till September and October. But if you're a kid that's looking at early decision cycles, so ideally you should be doing this between January till April or latest by May, that you have already given your 2 to 3 SAT attempts. Now I've just said that 2 to 3 SAT attempts. What does this mean? The idea behind your double or triple SAT attempts is to utilize the SAT super score concept. How does that concept work? You give this paper twice. They will take the best of your maths score and the best of your English score across 2 to 3 attempts, and they will club it together and give you your SAT score over 1600. So for example, you score, let's say 750 once, and then you score another 750, that is going to on another paper, then overall you've got a 1500 score, and the overall super score that would be submitted is going to be 1500 over 1600. Regardless, if your individual SAT 1 and 2 attempts are not 1500, they're lower than that, but the SAT super score is going to be considered, where they'll take your best of maths and the best of English. There's no difference between a super score SAT result and a single attempt SAT result. So it makes a lot more sense for you to at least give it twice or thrice. And the only time that I'll suggest a kid doesn't need to give it more than once is if you have scored above 1550 in your first attempt. The moment you have gone above 1550, there's no requirement to give another SAT attempt. So if you're giving your SAT, make sure you're going above 1450, and if you're applying for a top 20, 30 college, and if you're really serious about it, and your SAT is an important cornerstone to it, so try to score above 1450, and you really max out the moment you go even 5 marks above 1550 in that sense. So that's the concept behind your SAT super score. Otherwise, it is, as I've said, a standardized test which is used for majority of applications in USA. The new test that has been now launched, which is now the digital SAT, really focuses across on the skills and knowledge on the heart of this whole process. It really wants to understand how well have you learned your high school syllabus of the 2 subjects, and how can you really go ahead and apply it in the type of questions that they have. So it's very much applied maths and English when you're going to be examining or sitting down for this paper, and it is exactly what you need to, let's say on its final sense, to succeed in college. It's not as an entrance exam as you see in joint entrance exam, where they're going to be grilling you for maths, physics and chemistry of grade 12. They're just seeing the enough kind of maths that a kid should require while studying undergrads in USA. And do remember the concept that your major declaration is not mandatory. So any kid that is going for a maths major or is going for any other major, as let's suppose he's even going for history, they both will be giving that same SAT score. So the SAT is not really testing your maths to a level that you're going to be doing your undergraduation in maths or you're going to be doing your undergraduations in English, but it's with the understanding that you are coming to do undergrad. There's a certain amount of maths and English you're supposed to understand, and that's one of the main reasons that it is kept to that level, and that's how you're supposed to understand the skill level required behind it. And it's more across how well you can apply that level of mathematics, more application based. Now, another, really dig deep into why is it important. Another very specific part about it, the SAT blind and SAT optional and SAT mandatory kind of question. So beyond giving you the explanation of majority of the kids do give SAT, the stats that you could see behind Harvard and behind your top colleges. Also this conversation behind, which has been now running across after COVID, that is SAT mandatory, is it SAT optional? How do I look at a college which has made SAT optional? Does it make sense for me to submit it? Can I just not also submit it? And when you're really talking about can I not submit it, it's largely around colleges as SAT blind. And SAT blind colleges are predominantly in the state of California. The reason why that is because during your pandemic, of your COVID pandemic, Californian legislation had been passed that every student does not have access to your SAT, and thus it should not be made mandatory. Colleges were encouraged to make it optional. Universities of California went ahead and made it SAT blind. So far, they haven't really, shown any inclination of bringing SAT back. But barring your universities that are in the state of California, your other states, let's suppose, and your other colleges, for example, institutes like Dartmouth and Harvard and Brown, they've all gone back to your testing. They've all made, mandate required SAT score. You look at Johns Hopkins has now also gone back, and they are looking across at your SAT score. Beyond all of your SAT mandatory, your SAT optional colleges, there too again, I would suggest you it's better to give a SAT score rather than not, because the moment you don't submit a SAT score, it's a rather straightforward communication saying that you don't really score well in SAT, or your grades weren't good in SAT, and that's why you've not submitted it. And the moment you have given this one negative, to counter this negative punch, you really have to punch very hard on your extracurriculars, on your other activities. You have to look into your profile and really see, have I done enough that I could justify the whole statement that I have not given a SAT score? Is it a justifiable statement? That then becomes the really wide and strong question. Now, beyond this one part of, let's say, why SAT is mandatory, why it's important, I've given you the understanding what SAT is overall. I think let's start now to break down the SAT in terms of sections, in terms of what are the parts, how is the overall scoring that looks like. So SAT is divided into two parts itself. You've got your reading writing component, you've got your maths component. The time allocated in your English and your maths section is 64 to 70 minutes respectively, and then you have got your number of questions, which is 54 in your reading and writing, 44 in your maths section. The scoring will be moving between 200 to 800, and overall you have that denominator of 1600 and the target that you're trying to get across. So a lot of times, if you're looking at a top college, you're doing well in maths, what we expect kids to do is go ahead and score an 800 in maths, right? There's a specific way how you could do it. It's become also quite an understanding topic itself after adaptive SAT has just been introduced. My next slide, I'll be moving and explaining you what is an adaptive SAT itself. But when you're applying and going for a top college, you see maths is that one area where you could really outscore yourself, get a good score, get a full Monty of 800. What it does for you, it allows you to have a negative start or a handicap of 50 in English, because in English scoring in 800 of 800, it's not impossible. A lot of students do that, but it's extremely challenging. It's more difficult than scoring in 800 in mathematics itself. So we do really push for kids, and we really do help kids to get a full Monty in math. get that 800 there. And then in terms of an English, score anywhere between 700 and 750, or let's say 10 or 20 above 750, you're good to go with your SAT score. You would hit your 1500, 1550, and any SAT score above it. So one of that best way to achieve a 1500 plus SAT score is to get a full Monty on maths, get an 800 out of 800. Now, how do you get an 800 out of 800? How do you get the scoring? It has changed drastically ever since your digital SAT came across. With digital SATs coming across, a very major change happened was this concept of adaptive SAT scoring was introduced. What is adaptive SAT scoring? It is using one kind of examination, but having it changeable dependent on the kind of student that is applying. What am I really saying? There, you could either see this in a way that there are three kind of students, or which are going to go down in three kind of different paths, which is on these two stages that comes across. So you'll see here, there's a stage 1, then there's a stage 2, and then this is the second type of a stage 2. So either you could call this stage 1 or stage 2, stage 3, or you could just say this as stage 1 and this all together as stage 2 itself. But what is the difference between these two stages? This I would call it your path 2, and this I'll call it path 3, or vice versa. But this is the real differentiator of you able to score between, let's say, a range of 1500 to 1600. This is where you'll be typically lying across. If it's in overall sense, you could also say 1400 to 1600. Bare minimum of applying to a good college in USA, you would be going through this harder stage 2. If you're not doing well with SAT, that is where you'll be dropped across on that easier SAT, stage 2 kind of a one, which you could also call it as your path 2. And then eventually you do also have a path 3, which we call the mixed performance. But what do these stages typically mean? So what happens at stage 1 is you'd be given a mix of 3 types of questions: easy, medium, and hard. Now, dependent on how well you score on your stage 1, it would then result in you getting stage 2 kind of questions in your round 2, or your easier kind of question. So if you have done well on stage 1, what will happen for you is you will get the difficult questions of stage 2. And if you're going through this route of stage 1 and stage 2, the SAT score range that you'd be having or scoring from would be from 1400 to 1600. Now, beyond that, I'll go to the other side. Let's suppose if you have not scored well here, you have had bad kind of scores, you will move across to the easier kind of stage 2, in which your scores would be coming across from 1000 to 1300. Right? This is where you have gone lower on your performance. Your stage 1 did not do well. They gave you easier kind of questions, but then you cannot score above 1300. The mixed kind of performance, so let's say the average one is, you have done stage 1 averagely well, you went across to stage 2, they gave you, those average kind of questions, you then will be scoring between 1200 to 1400. So the whole overall concept is that stage 1 is exactly the same for every kind of student. Now, depending how well you have done stage 1, your stage 2 kind of questions will be decided. Are they going to be more towards difficult? If they're more towards difficult, then you will be open to a higher range of SAT scores of 1400 to 1600. You do well on both those modules, you will have good grades. You move across, you do lower grades, let's say in your stage 1. So predominantly your stage 2, you'll be introduced to easier questions, but then your band of scoring will drop to 1200 to 1400. If you have done even, let's say, lesser in your module 1, your SAT score will then drop between 1000 to 1300. So largely every student does have a SAT score above 1000, naturally speaking. And you then move across, and then you'll see your top kids will be the one that will be doing stage 1 quite well, will be getting difficult questions in stage 2, and then will be having a SAT score of 1400 to 1600. If you're a student that is aiming for a top 20 college, you should be really looking across bare minimum 1450 to 1600. If you're really looking for those elite colleges, have a score definitely above 1500. Anything above a 1550, your SAT endeavors are complete. Now, this is how the scoring happens on SAT. What is the overall syllabus? I'll just give you a quick look across what it is. Your maths is divided into 4 parts, which is algebra, geometry, and trigonometry, 2 different aspects. Moving across to advanced mathematics, the fourth part is your problem solving and data analysis. Across all of them, you could see the topics within algebra. You've got linear equations, one variable, two variable, linear functions. Within geometry and trigonometry, you look at non-linear equations, you look at systemic equations, non-linear functions. Moving across to a lot of advanced maths topics, and across all of them, you do get 13 to 15 questions in your first two topics, your algebra and geometry. Advanced maths and data analysis, you will get 5 to 7 questions each, where a lot of weightage is there in your first two sections, followed by maths and data analysis. Now that's the maths syllabus that they do have. When it moves across to data in terms of reading and writing, you've got craft and structure, you've got information and ideas, you've got your standard English conventions, and then expression of ideas. You'd see the overall breakages that we have put across. So the idea, you'll have a lot of essays that you'll be answering across from. You'll have to explain, either when you're writing the various ideas, textual and quantitative inferences from them. Within, when it comes to your standard English conventions, the form, structure, sense, all of those are the various things that would be looked across. And when it comes to the expression of ideas, rhetoric, synthesis, and transitions, and then overall you could see the different weightages that come across. So these are the various components when it comes across to SAT, and those, as I explained to you, moving across was why SAT and why any of those entrance exams are important. It's not just what are all those facts that I was talking about in terms of SAT importance. It's not restrictive to SAT itself. SAT is not the only exam that you could be going across. If these kind of topics are not very comfortable for you, USA does also offer another kind of entrance exam, which is ACT. ACT is not run by College Board. It's a separate body that runs ACT. ACT is available both online and offline. Offline modules are largely there for US kids. International kids go through the online platform. And within near future, there are conversations that ACT, like SAT, may go totally digital. So we may start even seeing adaptive scoring as it's there with your SAT will come across with ACT. Super scoring again is possible in ACT itself. The duration here is 2 hours 55 minutes, and you do also have an optional 40-minute essay that you could give, but that's an optional. Not a lot of kids these days are doing it. So you're predominantly handling these 5 sections in ACT, and it's exactly the same concept as your SAT runs, in which they're checking your grade 10 mathematics and English, how well you have done in your in your academics in that terms. They're not really grilling you on maths. They're not really grilling you in English. And as a matter of fact, there's this one common misconception that ACT is a science-based paper. It is not. It does have a science section, but if you look into it, it is an essay which is English-based, which is science-based. So again, if you see the science section of ACT, it is largely a English comprehension test, which the topic is going to be a science one. So again, I would not call ACT again in that area. That's not comparable to joint entrance exam, where they'll be grilling you on your physics and chemistry knowledge of grade 12. Again, the understanding is simple. They want to understand how well you have grasped the topic of maths and English up till grade 10, which makes you suitable for undergraduation education in USA. Again, as you remember, it's not mandatory to set out your majors. In India, your joint entrance exam is a test of the capability of you to challenge that major. And that's why they go into that depth. Because major declarations are not mandatory, there's no stage of checking your major compliance. They're only seeing your ability to survive within a top US college, looking at your basic understanding and application of maths and English with a little bit of an essay that comes across on the science section. So that is now ACT. Within the comparison of ACT and SAT, how do they differ from one another? ACT has got more sections. You have science, which also comes across. The 5th section is the optional essay. The time duration, SAT is a much more time crunch paper rather than ACT. ACT is much more lenient when it comes to giving you time. Both of them will allow you a calculator. SAT will focus on algebra, problem solving, data analysis, while your ACT maths does cover a wide range of more topics, including trigonometry, while you'll also do understand it will be grade 10 mathematics. And then moving across to the science section, SAT does not have a dedicated science essay, but ACT does have a dedicated science essay, but it does not have a science section, as some people may be aware when it comes across to your joint entrance exam. Your SAT versus ACT, again, in terms of the scoring aspects, it is between 1415 to 1550 as the place where majority of the kids do lie. 32 to 35 is that average score that you'll be getting with an ACT itself. The overall denominator 1600 for SAT, 36 for ACT itself, and you could attempt this 7 times a year. SAT can be done anywhere between, if you're in USA, August, October, November, December, March, May. International students do have this sitting between August, October, December, March, and May again. So as I've already said, that the attempts that you'll be giving in your grade 11 will be between January till May. You should be using any of these various settings, and do give all of these examinations within these settings themselves, and try to give it 3 times, which would be giving you the right kind of hit on it. Now, just moving you across, how does Let's Unbound look across in this aspect of SAT preparation? So you'd have seen the points that I had spoken about with SAT versus ACT. The primary thing that would have really come across, lesser section, the speed is required on the higher side because you've got lesser time, and it's not really about a calculator, and it's more about your accurate understanding and application of mathematics, and it is much more of a very quick 100-meter dash. It's not a marathon, it's not a long-term paper, it's something in which you have to show speed and accuracy and a lot of practice before you go ahead and attempt it. It's not a technical paper, it's a speed paper, it's an accuracy paper. Now, how do we help students prepare for it? We first start across with a diagnostic. That's the first thing that we want to understand. We want to understand how well your preparations of mathematics and all of that has gone across. For you to do give this diagnostic, I've just added this link here on the chat section. Just copy and paste that link after my session today. You could go and do a diagnostic for yourself. Understand how well your SAT score is going. Once you've done that diagnostic, we've got the result. We could help you create a personalized plan for it and give you a full understanding of where your gaps are, what you need to recover, what can you do better, and help you get that right kind of a SAT score. Beyond that, we then also have this opportunity of one-on-one live tutoring. So if you do like our study plan, you could move across and work with us, and where we would implement that live tutoring program with you, assigning you a mentor who will sit with you overall in those, even if you're in grade 8, grade 9, grade 9, 10th, we will be helping you with the current concepts of maths, preparing you to, getting to the point when you get to grade 11 maths, your foundation is strong. Because once you're attempting a paper, as in the last slide that you see, which is about accuracy and speed, one of the primary things that you do need is a very clear strategy, as you have seen, but a very clear foundation in which you're able to run across on that speed, where you're able to run across on that accuracy. Now, beyond that, we also do give exclusive strategy sessions, which are extremely important within SAT. As you do understand, you do have these 2 sections where you have to do very well in that round 1. You have to make sure how you're scoring well, the topics that will be coming across in them, the kind of focus that you'll be going in those specific topics that are in round 1 are very important for you to open that opportunity of 1400 to 1600 SAT score. That's the kind of conversation that we do have in that exclusive strategy session. And then obviously we do have the full length mock test and live mocks, in which you could practice numerous times before you do go and give your first SAT attempt. And as you know, we can't give more than 2 to 3 SAT attempts. It's better that we do a lot of practice sessions, and we help the students to do these practice sessions. And before you have given your SAT attempt, you are very sure and clear what is that kind of SAT score you'll be getting. Do remember, getting a 1550 SAT score is almost becoming a near mandatory if you're applying for a top institute, and that same fact also remains for your ACTs. Now, with your SATs and ACTs done, we will move across to the next part of our conversation. What are APs? What are these aspects? Why are they used? APs has got a very different kind of definition dependent on the kind of student that you're talking to. I would say that there are 3 kinds of students that are created, or 3 different kind of categories of students that are created if you're dividing the student population in terms of AP and its usage. every 3 category will use its AP as per its own requirements. But before we get into those details, again, just like SAT, AP is also a concept which is run by the college board itself. The same NGO that conducts SAT is the same one that will be conducting your college board examinations. It is a duration of 2 to 3 hours, right? That's the single examination that you would be giving. It gives you options from it gives you options from 38 different subjects that you could be taking across on, and these 38 different subjects, they are moved across in, let's say, 9 different categories that you'll be having. So what are those 9 different categories? Those 38 different selections we would be moving across in them. On the current stage, your APs is not on an online platform. There's specific schools and institutes that are collaborated with College Board, where you'd have to travel. You'd have to go to the website of College Board. You'll have to go to APs. You'll have to see, let's say, between this registration period of September to November, of going to the website and finding that, for example, you're living in Delhi and you want to give maths AP, you'll be seeing this various centers around you that will be giving you this date to be held between somewhere in May over a 2-week period. You'll have to travel to that board itself or that center itself, give that examination. As I've said, it's a 2 to 3 hour paper. You give that examination, you'll be graded out of 5. And it's a band score. 5 out of 5 does not mean 100%. It means the top percentages for that year. So you get a 5 out of 5 if you're in the top tier of the results for that various subject itself. So again, AP done by College Board. You do the registrations online between September and November. You look for a center around your geographical location. You'll be giving this examination in May. The ideal grades that you'll be thinking and working across on APs will be between grade 10 to 11. You have 9 different categories and 38 different selections to go across, and each subject or each exam is $60 each. Right, so this is the basic introduction of what an AP actually is. Now, beyond that, what are advanced placements? How are they typically used? Which are the kind of populations that I said, the 3 different categories? One first category I'll start across are the ones that you largely see in USA. These are found in those US schools which are not affiliated to a certain board. There are a lot of schools in USA that don't affiliate themselves to IB. They don't affiliate themselves to your IGCSE and eventually A levels, your Cambridge board. And then what these students do is that they select between these 38 different selections ranging from 9 different topics, 5 to 8 subjects. They score between on the band of 5, and these AP scores are used as a replacement to the subject scores that for example, a kid doing your IB would be submitting 6 subjects. A kid that would be doing IGC A levels would be submitting 5. CBSE students submit 5. So what a typical school like that in USA does, it allows students to select any 5 subjects from all of these 38 options, and those 5 results are used as your academic results for grade 12. So that first kind of population in USA actually uses APs in lieu of your grade 12 schools. Now, the second kind of population, which obviously USA does use, but this kind of populations are the ones that are going to be doing IB and IGCSE. Them doing this AP is going over and beyond the selection of 6 and 5 subjects that they've selected, more specifically because they have this interest. Now imagine a case scenario where you have taken physics, you have taken chemistry, you have mathematics, then you have taken English, and you have then, for example, routed this across with computer science. And at that stage, you're also someone who might be thinking across with a degree in biotechnology. And because out of beyond these 5 subjects, you do love biology, you're not able to select it, what does the student do? It just goes and takes an AP biology. So from that admissions officer's point of view, when you're going for biotech, and eventually if you make the selection of biotechnology as a major, you do have majors of biology. If you have taken biology in your grade 12, then you have taken computer science AP. So what you're trying to explain to the admissions officer, that you have taken all of these academic subjects within your grade 12 because you have got this added interest within academics itself for different subjects. This is what you're adding across. So you're increasing your academic profile beyond the 5 and 6 mandatory subjects of your grade 12 by taking this advanced AP. This is the second kind of population, differentiating it from the first kind, which selects 5 APs as your 5 basic subjects. The second AP sub students, what they're doing, they're taking the 5 to 6 subjects of the board, adding another 2 to 3 APs to expand the horizon of subjects that they have expertise. Now, the third kind of student is looking to, let's say, expand their complete narrative per se. For example, if the student has gone across and has taken various APs in science oriented, he can go and select humanity based APs, because if you're applying to MIT really likes this inclination of a student, even who's coming from computer science, to have this inclination towards humanities and social sciences. The student, for example, is extremely interested in sciences and your basically STEM-based subjects, but has an interest towards political science, has an interest towards geography or in history. We do encourage students to continue having that interest. Those students are then, that's the third kind of population, which would then be using APs as, for example, increasing their horizon. This is that kind of student in which we don't really say this AP result is not part of your academics. This AP can then become part of your 10 activities as well. That beyond my academics, you could describe that I went across and selected 5-6 APs in social sciences and political sciences because I had this interest. I wanted to achieve this target by creating a project around it, and this AP was giving me the knowledge that was being required. So that is that third kind of usage of an AP, in which you're not using it as your grade 12 score. You're not using it to show extra academic interest, but you're trying to show an extra narrative about your personality, moving beyond just the basic academics that you study. So that's the third, kind of population, that students that are using APs. But what are APs eventually? They're basically just college level credit courses that are available in USA, and the subject matter of this any of these APs are US undergraduation degree courses. It also has further usages. I'll be just going across to them after I've introduced you the subjects of them. So what are the various courses that are available within that 38 stream? You have selections from English, maths, science and computer science. Moving across, you do have sections as history, social sciences, economics, geography, art, design, world languages. Now, this is the overall option, and you can, as I said, the first kind of population will just go ahead and select any kind of 5 subjects from it. And what does this benefits the US kid? That it doesn't have to go through that rigor of saying, I need to pick up PCM as a combination. Or for example, if you're doing IB, you don't have this aspect of saying that I'm picking 3 HLs and 3 SLs. You could just select any 5 subjects you like. You could go ahead and mix Latin with chemistry. You could mix music theory with, for example, your statistics. But there are certain APs in which you have to do in combos. For example, if you want to do mathematics, AP Calculus BC, you need to do AP Calculus AB. If you, for example, want to do computer science A, you need to do the science principle. So there are a couple of things that are connected to one another. If you're going to be eventually doing your micro, if you're going to be doing your macro, you would have eventually first had to run your microeconomics. So there are a few APs that happen one after the other. Within your history, arts, world design, there is no certain sequence. Your sequence is largely around mathematics, economics, and computer science themselves. And then again, even within sciences, you have to do physics 1 before you're going to be doing physics 2. You have to do your mechanics first before you do electricity and magnetism. So there are a couple of APs that there's a certain sequence in which you'll be attempting, and that's that notion for that first population. Population B, which is adding on that profile, you'll have to select which is the subject that you've missed across in school and the one that you're adding across here. As a fun fact, just to also give you this understanding, if you're going to be studying economics in undergrads, you don't need to study economics in 12th. You need to take maths in grade 12. If you're going to be studying computer science in undergrads, you don't need to take computer science in grade 12. So what a lot of students do is they opt out of computer science and economics of grade 12, and they opt in for economics and computer science APs, which is your population 2. So as I was explaining you the 3 populations in my last slide, in this slide, I'm explaining you now how those kids are selecting the APs using AP names themselves. So that second slide, that the second kind of populations, which are including that expansion, take mathematics, take the mandatory requirements in your grade 12. And for the add-on information of learning more about economics, computer science, sciences, take all of these various APs. If you want to show inclination, you do have options as history, social sciences, art, design, world languages. So all of those increase of your profile can be used through those different kind of APs. So this is how your AP selection happens. Now, how is it important? Which are the various ways that you could use it? I had explained that AP is a college level course. It's a college level examination almost. So if you do maths, AP, BC, AB and BC, there are certain credits that you will be allocated. So even before you have gone into an undergraduation college, you have started to earn the college credits, which are then going to be accumulated. And once you accumulate a certain amount of college credits, you are awarded your undergraduation degree. So technically, even before getting into undergrad, you have started down your journey of undergraduation itself. So that is one, very important part, very important reasoning and requirement of it. And obviously, it's used for college admissions themselves. You can show them across for showing inclinations, for showing much more broader profile. It's extremely cost saving because, obviously, because you have done a couple of college credits before. So a lot of students do look at this as saying that I will have to select lesser courses in university, and comparatively a college course in USA is going to be much more expensive than $60. So you end up saving money by giving your APs, and at the same time your APs are a very good replacement of also doing other activities, which really gives you good time for your internships as well. Really opens up that room in that sense. These are the various requirements or the various reasons that people also do use APs. Apart from that, as I've said, the three categories of student, dependent on which category you are. Largely in our session, I don't expect a lot of US kids themselves, or kids that are not going or having a board. So the kids on my call today would be really using APs of selecting those subjects which they're not able to select in those 5-6 subjects they're selecting. So they could expand their academic profile, or they want to expand their overall profile by taking music APs, by taking world history APs or psychology APs. So, if you're a science student, you've also got selected some humanities. So those are the three various important reasons, along with college credits, along with college admissions and cost savings, that are also add-on. So those are your 6 very important pillars or reasons why students are, really going across with APs these days. Now, about that exam, as I've given you majority of this information as well, that, it is to, tackle college level studies. You trying to give you more perspective about physics and chemistry, about computer science available on your undergrads. It is there to create a narrative. It's there to show academic inclination, show diversification in academic interest, earn college credits, build rigor. So I've covered all of these 5 different various aspects and points about why you should be giving that AP. Now the Let's Unbound process, I will just run you quickly. How do we work with a specific student beyond your AP section? We would be taking in the input. What is the input that comes across is a psychometric test. So the moment a student joins across, we do run these various tests, which helps us understand that what are the kind of inclinations the students has, what the personality do they have. Because do remember, it is very mandatory for you to score 1500, 1550. But even with a 1550 score, they only select 8% kids out of that band, and it is only 15% of this journey. So to complete this whole journey in the right sense, to understand that 85%, we do the psychometric test, we understand your narrative, we start with college counseling, we understand how those 10 activities will be created, help you create your profile, help you create the skill. And once grade 11 comes, and I showed you the timeline of how your SAT preparation also happens, we help you with the application and admission guidance, and eventually conclude the work with your visa and stay guidance, help you select that right kind of hostel services for yourself and where you'll be going. And the final admission that we want to do would be, for example, I want to get you admitted into UCLA for environmental science program for undergrads. That's the outcome. So input, that I understood the student, personality, interests, help you create all of the profile and application parts to it, the SAT score, the personal statements, the essays, letter of recommendation, representation of all the 3 to 4 years conclude after the admission and visa has been stipulated. So this is the whole journey in that way of a student working with us. Now, the journey that a student will take specifically for SAT and ACT, because see, this session I've dedicated for SAT and ACT, so we're talking just about these two topics. Grade 8, 9 and 10, we have created a lot of PSAT kind of modules in which we would be helping you prepare and understand if you're going across on the right direction. Then what we do, we use the college board's PSAT, which is conducted between October, March and April for kids in grade 8, grade 9, for you to understand how well this preparation is going across, how correctly you're coming across to that 1550 or 1600 score. And then in grade 10, you do also have this window between March to April. With this current year, it will be between March 3 till April 30. All of those kids in grade 10 can be giving another PSAT score. Your grade 10 PSAT score makes a lot more sense because you've concluded the grade 10 syllabus, which is the syllabus for your SAT, and then you're getting your first reflective result. Once you have this result in your grade 10 from March 3 to April 30th, we then start working from this time period all the way up till December, bridging that, whatever that score that you're looking across and trying to get you beyond 1550. So once you're in grade 11, we are coming across to your May to August. We are researching which universities are going to be requiring SAT or ACT. We'll be defining that either you're giving SAT or you're giving ACT. And during this time, we will try to identify the APs that you'll be giving. From September to November, you prepare for your ACTs, you register for your APs. Then you move across to the first week of December. You would be then starting to register for SATs, whichever the attempts you prepare. This is then starts your final leg of SAT preparation before the first attempt itself. In January somewhere to March, you'll be giving your first to second attempt. Your then second or third attempt should be coming between March till May, and in May itself then you go ahead and complete your AP. So your January till March till May is basically running your SAT attempts from 1, 2 to 3 and concluding your SAT attempts before the start of May. So then in May itself you could start focusing across on your AP syllabus and concluding that AP itself. Once that aspect is covered, June to July, you go back for your school preparations and your grade 12 preparations. You should by this stage would have completed your personal statement. So you start working on your essays. At August to September, we look at your letters of recommendations. The Common App is being fulfilled and you start to prepare your resume. October is when you finalize all of your letters of recommendations, your documents, any place we need to give an English proficiency score, you start submitting your scores themselves. And 1st of November is that first application deadline that comes across. Overall, what do we help students to do? We help them in their academic test prep, SAT, ACT, PSATs, APs, school scores, helping you build profiles, leadership, all of those various activities, and then the admission process themselves. And what you could see, this is one of your processes that we do have for this kid who joined us in grade 10, learned advanced coding, mentoring, did coding workshops, got a 1550 SAT score, published a book on Amazon, won a coding competition, then was admitted into a University of Illinois. So this is one complete journey of a kid that has come across with us. And while you will be working with us, you'll be seeing a lot of various different other exercises. These are the various college press programs that we do have, which is your tutoring strategy. We'd be giving you the admission and strategy prep. We'd be giving you a complete platform. There would be an AI reviewer as well, which will help us understand which areas were you taking much more time, what can be the exact reason, which topic is the one that should be highlighted, looking at the way that the place that you made a mistake and the reason that you made a mistake. So we use extremely AI for analysis at the mistake level or the conceptual understanding, where the maths has to be fixed on a concept level, and the same moving across for English. Right now, along with this, what we'd also like you to join us across on, this is a newsletter that we publish every month. I'll be putting this down again in the chat section. Just save this link. So as I told you in the initial part, that even if you're not taking notes, it's not a problem. You could join across on various platforms where we keep on putting information about admissions abroad. So that first one that I've already shared with you is newsletter through Beehives that we specifically put across, tackling about APs and SATs and ACTs. So whatever I've spoken across today, you can find that information available on it. Apart from that, your college guest pressed podcast. This podcast we had done with a student that I had personally worked across with, Malay Mehta, and Nishant, who's our lead strategist when it comes to our mentoring program. He's the founder who had created this whole journey when it comes to really your coaching and mentoring program around SATs and APs. So you could see this really nice conversation between the Dartmouth admit and our founder Nishant. Right, that's one part that you could look across. This is just now, before I conclude, across a couple of journeys that you could read of a student that went to Illinois. It's worked with us for 15 months. It started with us from 10th, the 1550 SAT score. This is that student which published its book in Amazon and driven passion with coding. And as I said, that student eventually went to Illinois itself. The student that went into Dartmouth, again, a 1550 SAT score. It had, did a essay competition with Oxford, a national level basketball player, founded an NGO, talented solo singer, has got a strong profile. So, that's the kind of student, again, we had then worked with. This is a 150 SAT boost in 60 days. So this is one claim that we do have, and a program that we typically work across with. So the student in grade 12 came across with us with a 1190 SAT score. And then, while working with us, we were able to give that push, and the student eventually closed with a 1340 SAT score, just working 60 days with us. So there are various such success stories that you'll be hearing across of how we have taken, that score. This is another one to be speaking across, from 1300 to 1540, overcoming it with speed and stamina challenges. So this is how we work. Those are a couple of results that I wanted to share across with you. Now, to be concluding this session, do also take a screenshot of this QR code. It will help you join a group, a WhatsApp group of ours, which we also use to put across various different information when it comes to admissions abroad. And then finally, you could use this QR code to book a one-on-one consultation session with us, in which we would be running, help you also go through the diagnostic SAT and give you an understanding of what the roadmap should be for you if you want to prepare and get through this admission journey. So this is what I had planned across for our discussion today, and I would be now concluding our session. But before I do, as I had said, I'll be taking the questions right at the end. So I'll just be going to the Q&A section. I'll just be seeing if there are any good questions, any question that I'll be taking across. Just give me a minute. Looking for information about medical admission in USA after 12. So USA admission routing is very difficult. The reason why it's difficult, it's a longer admission journey process than which you would be aware in India and UK. And why am I saying it's a different process? Because USA does not have an undergraduation degree in medicine. They have an undergraduation degree only available in postgrads. If you're looking to study medicine in USA, what you'll have to do is a Bachelor's of Science degree in chemistry, biology. They also do have this degree which is called pre-medicine, but again, it is just a Bachelor's of Science, chemistry and biology mixed degree. You will not be called a physician at the end of that degree itself. You will have to go ahead, sit for their MCAT, get admitted for a MD degree. At the end of that 4-year MD degree, then you'll be called a doctor. So if you're really looking for a medical degree or a line, UK makes much more sense. You are immediately admitted to a 5 to 6 year degree in Oxford, or let's suppose any of your top UK colleges for that medical routing. And yeah, I'm sorry, at the Q&A section had, if you could speak in Hindi. We'd conduct another session. We could also have that as another aspect. Would have requested if I could have gotten that in the chat section. Now, my son is doing IB and ACCA along together will be ACCA, right? Well, I wouldn't really say that just specifically ACCA on its individual is considered a spike on its own. We'll have to see what is the overall effect it has on the profile itself. And I guess you would have understood it's that same aspect as in APs. There are 3 reasons why you could be doing either of them. Is it to show academic rigor? Is it to show, an expansive profile? Is it to show a much more horizontal academic profile as well? So it will really be dependent on how we're trying to do. So really, we'll have to see it on that individual level. Right now, which AP do I suggest you to select? I think what I'll suggest you is, let's get onto a one-on-one session with us, and I'd be able to then run you through with your profile. What does it make sense for you to use AP as an academic rigor aspect? Is it important for you to show non-extracurricular activities? Does it make sense to take a music AP? So I wouldn't really say on an overall sense that every kid should take a computer science AP or a maths AP. It really depends on what is the kind of journey that you are seeing within your your academic aspect that really helps you across in that way. Sure. So with if there are no further questions now, I'll be concluding my session. It was really nice conducting this informative aspect for you guys. If you really enjoyed the session, do let us know through the reviews and feedback on our website, and would like to meet you again next weekend. We'll be taking up more different topics, much more different aspects beyond admissions abroad. So till then, see you next week itself. Thank you.